human connection that we create on the broadcast every night is incredibly important.
CBS News. Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan Sunday on CBS. When weather turns extreme, CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real, you'll have time to get prepared. Feel the forecast on the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell.
The phrases were used so often I wrote them down. Laid out. Ongoing process. Take seriously. These are the phrases the Biden White House clung to today by way of responding to probing questions from reporters about then Vice President's handling or possible mishandling of classified documents and how it's become a very big problem for President Biden now. Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Major Garrett in Washington, and we thank you very much for joining us. Attorney General Merrick Garland has appointed a special counsel to oversee the investigation related to the discovery of documents with classified markings at President Biden's Wilmington home and former private office here in Washington. Robert Hur is the special counsel now in charge. He's a former U.S. attorney from Maryland and was appointed to that post by former President Trump. Garland discussed his decision today.
I strongly believe that the normal processes of this department can handle all investigations with integrity. But under the regulations, the extraordinary circumstances here require the appointment of a special counsel for this matter. This appointment underscores for the public the department's commitment to both independence and accountability in particularly sensitive matters, and to making decisions indisputably guided only by the facts and the law.
The phrases that pay there, extraordinary circumstances, particularly sensitive. Keep those in mind as this story develops. This morning, the White House counsel said some documents marked classified were found in the garage and an adjacent room at Biden's home in Wilmington, Delaware. Nothing of a nature like that was found at his home in Rehoboth Beach. The president's lawyer said the Department of Justice was, quote, immediately notified, unquote, and arrangements were made to turn over the materials. Joining me now are two of my CBS News colleagues. Correspondent Adriana Diaz, I'm happy to say, is here at the desk. And our senior White House and political correspondent, Ed O'Keefe, joins us from the North Lawn of the White House. Adriana, we learned some important time markings today that the White House could have disclosed but did not and had not.
Major, when the Attorney General was speaking, he really filled in the blanks pertaining to who knew what when. And what's jumped out at me was on December 20th, it turns out that that is the day that the files were discovered in the garage of the Wilmington house. And the reason why that is important is because when we started calling and asking questions, we got a statement from the White House on Monday, which was January 9th, saying that, yes, indeed, documents had been found, but they only mentioned the documents found at the Penn Biden Center, which we already knew about.
And which were found before that December 20th date.
Which was what kicked everything off, exactly. So for some reason, the White House omitted the fact that they already knew that there were additional documents at another location. So that is interesting. I don't know why that decision was made. I don't know why they didn't include all of the documents that they presumably knew about. But that is something that certainly is new this afternoon after the Attorney General made his announcement.
And Adriana, in Washington, when you have a story to tell and you don't tell all of it, it raises more questions, which brings us to Ed O'Keefe. Ed, describe what the room was like today, White House briefing, the phrases used repetitively in your attempts as well as others to get deeper, more comprehensive answers.
Well, like Adriana, we over here at the White House were stunned and stupefied when we learned from the Attorney General that, in fact, that second batch of documents was found on December 20th, just a few weeks after the initial discovery and several weeks ago. And so it once again raised the question of why not inform the world that these documents had been discovered before or as you were informing the National Archives and the Justice Department. There is nothing that would stop the President of the United States from letting it be known publicly that this had been discovered and that it had happened. And then more curiously, why did it take until just last night for them to find yet another document at his home in Wilmington? And it's now inviting a host of questions that almost play out like a game of Clue. Where in the house were the documents located? Was it in the garage? What's that room adjacent? Is that the personal library that the president referred to in his statement earlier today? Or is it another room? And all of these questions that we're trying to ask in the public, non-legal space are not being answered by the White House press office. They are claiming in their public statements that they are being transparent and that they are following the rules. And as Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, said several times today, doing the right thing or did the right thing. And it's probably a line we're going to hear a lot more from them. But they're not being transparent in the non-legal public space, political space, by revealing what was said. These statements from the White House counsel's office that revealed some information, but not all information, are essentially the equivalent of a kid saying, I took out the trash, but not revealing that he didn't put it in the trash can, or that something else happened to the trash on the way to it being taken out. They told us one thing, they didn't tell us everything around it, and they didn't tell us, more critically, the timing. So they're going to continue to claim that they're being transparent, and that may be the case in the legal sense, but not in the public political sense, after a president was elected vowing to be transparent, and right after taking office vowed that he would be transparent, fess up to mistakes, and lean on his staff at times to help explain and correct them. It happened again today. There was an exchange. We tried again, and I think we have part of it that we can play people. Was that because there were press reports earlier this week?
Again,
and the hope was that nobody would find out?
Again,
or was it because
there is a process, an ongoing process that is occurring? We did this by the book. And what I mean by that is the moment that the lawyers discovered that the papers were there or the documents were there, they reached out to the archives, they reached out to the Department of Justice, and they immediately, rightfully so, reached out to them to let them know what they had discovered.
And I should have clarified. The question was, why were we only informed about this second discovery of documents today, and why did they suddenly go back to the home in Wilmington just this week to make one final review? Was it because of the press reports from Adriana's incredible scoop? And so, look, we'll see how this continues to play out, but clearly there's a legal process and there's the public process that the White House so far is refusing to engage in. Major, among other things, and you know how frustrating this is having sat in the seats, we couldn't get basic information today on who exactly is the president's personal attorney representing him in these matters. The attorney general referred to personal counsel that had reached out to the archives and had been engaged with the Justice Department in December when that second batch was found. Karine Jean-Pierre couldn't tell us. Couldn't tell us basic information on when exactly today and by whom the president was informed that a special counsel was being formed or being hired to investigate this. The president was sitting at a memorial service up the street at Washington National Cathedral for the late Defense Secretary Ash Carter when the Attorney General made this comment. So if they say he wasn't told in advance by the Justice Department that this announcement was being made, who told him? When? Where? During the funeral? Afterward? Among the many questions we still have.
And Ed, for those in our dedicated audience who might have watched the White House briefing today, when the press secretary says, I want to refer you to the White House counsel's office or the Department of Justice, it leaves in the air the idea that you're going to get a call back. Walk our audience through the actual practical truth of that reference.
We don't necessarily get a call back. The White House counsel's office, at least in the last few days, in this White House, has issued statements in response to press reports or issued statements in response to the Attorney General. And it's been, 4 days now, so we'll see how it goes from there. We have repeatedly, Adriana and the team of producers who are ably working with her on this every single day, been asking the White House counsel's office and spokespeople for that counsel's office who were hired last year specifically to deal primarily with Republican congressional oversight that was anticipated from the House, but are now also dealing, of course, with this matter. They work separately from the White House press office that Karine Jean-Pierre runs as press secretary. And so we've asked the question, too. Well, why not have them come to the cameras and answer these questions in the daylight instead of sending emails that or making phone calls that don't necessarily get responses?
Adriana, the Attorney General said these are extraordinary circumstances of a particularly sensitive nature. When you appoint a special counsel within the Justice Department, you are saying essentially this is a big matter. Mm-hmm. It needs another set of eyes and all the resources required to carry this investigation wherever it might lead.
That wording stood out to me as well, Major. Extraordinary circumstances, because think of what we're considering here. Think of who and think of what. The who is the President of the United States, and the what is classified documents, which should always be in a secure location. So by appointing a special counsel, this is noting the gravity of the situation, the potential danger, risk, seriousness of the situation. And what he is essentially doing is allowing someone to have their own team, their own universe of resources to focus solely on this with independence. Because let's remember, Merrick Garland was appointed by Joe Biden.
Yep.
So Merrick Garland overseeing directly an investigation into Joe Biden is problematic.
Let me ask you real quick. What should we know or glean from the background of this particular special counsel appointed in this matter?
Well, Robert Hur is a former U.S. attorney for Maryland. He was appointed by President Trump. So there we have, that's emphasizing the independence here. But importantly, the NSA is located in Maryland. So he's overseen cases involving the NSA, overseen cases involving classified materials. So this is presumably an area of expertise for him.
And the person who made the recommendation to the Attorney General, John Lausch, also a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney in Chicago.
Correct.
So it appears that for good or ill, but for at least a political conversation, the Attorney General is leaning into people appointed to significantly important positions, past or present, by former President Trump.
And I thought it was interesting that he actually said that U.S. Attorney Lausch would be leaving the Justice Department to go into the private sector. So I don't know if he was asked possibly to be the special counsel here, but it was interesting that the Attorney General did note that.
Adriana Diaz, thank you so much. And Ed O'Keefe at the White House, we thank you. House Republicans, as you might know, have been vowing to investigate the Biden administration basically since the president's earliest days in office. Well, now they have the power to do so. I sat down with the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee earlier today, and we'll show you some of that conversation next. You are streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
Original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely.
As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, they are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app. When weather turns extreme,
States from the plains to the northeast are bracing for more than 2 feet of heavy snow.
every second counts.
This is a monster winter storm.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
There's a wrinkle in the forecast, the accumulating ice.
You'll have time to get prepared.
Take precautions before you head out.
Feel the forecast on the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
The carnage in our nation's schools has become painfully repetitive.
Not one more child!
School shootings have parents fighting mad.
I promised my daughter I was going to fight. It's going to keep on happening.
And teachers taking lessons in how to fight back.
This is an exercise. We approach it as it's you or them.
It shouldn't have to be your teacher's job to protect your life.
But will the battle over gun control
People are afraid that they're going to lose their gun rights altogether.
be the hardest lesson of all?
The exercise, you're having to shoot at an adult. Are you prepared to have to kill one of your students?
Guns in the Classroom, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Major Garrett. A special counsel has been appointed to oversee the investigation into President Biden's documents handled when he was vice president. This morning, before the special counsel was appointed, I spoke with Republican Ohio Congressman and House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan for this week's episode of The Takeout. Here's part of that conversation. There's been a disclosure of another batch in another location. Yeah. Does that trouble you?
Well, again, I think there's tons of questions. Where's the raid? Where's the pictures? Where's the special counsel? Some have called for that. What is a batch? No, it's more than one document. Is it two? Is it 2,000? How many more batches are coming? Where is the second location?
Does it matter to you these are relevant to his term as vice president as opposed to president?
Well, I would think that would only add to the weight of it. Because? Well, because the Supreme Court's been clear, the president is the person who has the ultimate ability to declassify documents. The vice president can handle classified material, obviously, because of an executive order, so he had them. But I do think, 6 years, were these documents at the Penn Center now for 6 years, or most of that 6-year time frame? So, again, there are tons of questions, but the White House doesn't seem to have many answers right now.
You mentioned the word raids. I well recall when the search warrant was executed at Mar-a-Lago, perhaps you, but certainly other Republicans said there shouldn't have been a raid in the first place. Are you in favor of raids in matters like this, or are you in favor of not raids?
I didn't say that. I just said there's an obvious, it seems to me.
What's your bottom line on that? Should there be raids, or can this be handled differently? And should it be handled differently?
I think what I'm saying is the double standard, I think, is starting to become evident. We've seen the double standard time and time again. We saw how Hillary Clinton's, when she had classified material, how that was handled versus how it was handled with President Trump. My understanding, from what I know, is President Trump was working with the Justice. He let the Justice Department come down and go through Mar-a-Lago. They said lock stuff up in this certain room, put a padlock on it. He did that. So he was working with them. I just see the double standard as the concern. I think
what do you think the standard should be? Classified documents are serious matters. They should be handled appropriately. But what should the standard be? I understand the point you're making about a double standard. What should the standard be? How should this be approached from the Justice Department's point of view?
I don't think they know. I mean,
what do you think? Do you have an opinion on that?
I think it should be consistent. So you tell me. So look, you got classified material. Let's treat it in a consistent fashion. That's what I'm saying. And this is part of this overall concern so many Americans have. I've heard it from constituents all the time. They're sick of the double standard that they see out there. With how conservatives get. You can pick your example. Look. We just had this debate on the floor yesterday. The FACE Act, which says that you can't restrict someone's access to an abortion clinic. The Justice Department has said, it's on their website, that applies to crisis pregnancy centers as well. But we sure see a double standard here because there have been over 100 crisis pregnancy centers and churches attacked in the aftermath of the leak of the Dobbs opinion. And to my knowledge, no one's been prosecuted. But yet you had the gentleman outside of Philadelphia, Mr. Houck, Mark Houck, whose door was kicked in, who was arrested in front of his wife and 7 kids for praying in front of an abortion clinic. That sure seems like a double standard. So what we want is consistency, equal application of the law, and it's frankly why the Republicans have set up this committee to look at
which we will get
how there has not been equal application of the law from our Justice Department.
You can catch my full interview with Congressman Jordan on The Takeout at our brand new date and time this Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on CBS News Streaming. Or, of course, you can download it on Apple Podcast. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland joins us now with more on reaction to Congressman Jordan and other conversation on the Hill today in reaction to this somewhat consequential, and I say that guardedly, it was very consequential, appointment of a special counsel in the documents matter and President Biden. Scott, good to see you. What's been the overall tenor and tone of Hill reaction?
Overall, the U.S. Capitol is at its political equilibrium, where it likes to be, with both sides accusing the other of double standards, both sides accusing the other of hypocrisy. That is the default position of the Capitol, and today that's what you're hearing. I spoke with the top Republican on the House Intelligence Committee, Major Michael Turner of Ohio, who says he is asking the Director of National Intelligence for a damage assessment of these records, those in Delaware, those at the Penn Biden Center here on Capitol Hill. The top Republican on the House Armed Services Committee, Mike Rogers of Alabama, is asking the Department of Defense to do something similar to assess possible damage. Then you have the top Democrat in the U.S. House, Hakeem Jeffries, and Jamie Raskin, the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, both saying these two things are not alike. From what's been reported so far and what's been revealed so far, they argue Biden's attorneys, the president's attorneys, seem to have voluntarily notified and surrendered possibly classified records to the National Archives. In the Mar-a-Lago case, they say there seemed to be a defiance of the archives by the Trump team, a disregard for orders to hand over records, which necessitated a raid and the seizure of those records. The raid is how then President Trump characterized it. The seizure is what the FBI has characterized the August 8th move at Mar-a-Lago. So you have Washington's default position. Two sides accusing the other of hypocrisy.
Scott, let me, with your indulgence, play a soundbite from the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, on this very matter earlier today. Let's both take a listen.
They knew this has happened to President Biden before the election, but they kept it a secret from the American public. He goes on 60 Minutes, criticizes President Trump, even knowing what he has done, and he wasn't president at the time. Now we find another location that it's at, but he refused to answer. His press secretary won't answer the questions. You watched them leak photos of sitting out files of President Trump. Where's the photos of President Biden's documents? Where are those photos at?
Scott, as I'm sure your ear caught, my ear caught, the Speaker basically saying we'd like to have leaked photographs of the president's documents, even though leaking those photographs was bad for President Trump. Similar to my conversation that you just heard with Jim Jordan. Are you for raids or are you against raids? There does seem to be a little difficulty in both sides resolving what they're actually for or against in this matter.
Yeah, and to clarify, the photo of the records seized from Mar-a-Lago were not leaked. They were part of a federal court filing. Correct. That was necessitated because of the length of the investigation. They weren't leaked so much as they were publicly posted and released for the courts to look at. Here's the thing, and there's really no way of getting around this, Major. This new U.S. House majority, which is trying to get on message out of the gates and trying to push through a first wave of legislation they say they campaigned on, is, first of all, completely distracted and off message in getting questions about George Santos. We'll leave that aside for now. But now facing the prospect of moving this records issue involving the president to the top of the queue and reorganizing their priority list. That's what they spent this day talking about. That's what they spent this day answering questions about. This is not what they expected, but they are very much gravitating toward this issue zealously, Major.
And, Scott, I'm really glad you clarified. A leak is not a leak if it is part of a disclosure in a court filing. That's exactly how the photo emerged. And Jim Jordan asserted to me that the president, the former president, had been cooperative with the Justice Department. Clearly, the Justice Department did not agree with that, or there would not have been a search warrant executed at Mar-a-Lago. Those two facts are crucial to all this. And, Scott, from your vantage point, we're going to have multiple committees trying to get some jurisdictional piece of this document story, true?
Yes, and if the committees had organized in the U.S. House, which they have not yet, there'd already be hearing dates and announcements out there of the next big public spectacle into this, the next big public hearing before TV cameras. But there's also going to be some turf wars here, Major. You can see it happening already. There are different committees that may claim oversight. There's a Judiciary Committee. There's an Oversight Committee. But also, there's this newly approved House Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government, which is this amorphous, potentially enormous committee, which Jim Jordan might also be leading. Expect there to be a lot of toes stepped on over the next few months on this issue and many others.
Scott, you might be interested to note, I asked Chairman Jordan, would he be the chairman of that select committee? He said, well, the speaker hasn't decided. I said, he certainly indicated as much. He said, well, I'll wait for the speaker to say that. I also, and people can hear this either on the podcast or watch it on Sunday, a lot of questions about what that select committee would do and wouldn't do. And I think it is fair to say, based on Jim Jordan's direct answers to me, they're still sorting that out. But he seemed a bit cautious on this very large question about whether it will involve itself or attempt to involve itself in ongoing criminal investigation. Scott, as you well know, that's been a concern raised by Democrats, right?
Yes. What's more, there seems to be this effort to match or make a match with the January 6th Select Committee, as if Republicans want to have their own. Some of the language in the bill creating this subcommittee matched the language creating the January 6th committee, but Major, Democrats say they won't boycott this the way Republicans did the January 6th committee. They don't want Republicans to have the ability to unify and synchronize a message and choreograph public hearings.
When the roll is called, Democrats will answer. Scott McFarland, thank you very much. The scandal surrounding Congressman George Santos' resume, well, it is heating up. Now he's speaking about what it would take, at least in theory, for him to step down. And leaders of the House are also weighing in. You'll hear about that in a minute. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy.
Potentially at my peril.
There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became a sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future.
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
After decades in the public eye and public service, this mother-daughter duo is now talking about gutsy women. What's the gutsiest thing you've ever done? We go person to person with Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I am Major Garrett. There are growing calls for New York Republican Congressman George Santos' resignation, including from within his own party in New York. The newly sworn-in lawmaker is facing backlash from Democrats and Republicans over fabrications and alleged lies in his biography. He is now the subject of multiple investigations and a House Ethics Committee complaint. Earlier today, Santos was again asked if there was any condition at all in which he would step down from office. Let's listen.
Congressman, what's your reaction to members of your own party calling for your resignation?
That's your prerogative.
If the voters ask for you to resign, will you resign if your voters
If
call?
142 people ask for me to resign, I'll resign.
Santos later clarified he was referring to the 142,000 people who voted him into office. Republican Congressman Mike Lawler, who represents New York's Hudson Valley, is joining the calls for Santos' resignation. In a statement released today, Lawler said he believes Santos has not taken full responsibility for his actions and is, quote, unable to fulfill his duties and should resign, unquote. But when it comes to the leaders of both parties in the House, as you might imagine, there are different perspectives. Here's what House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries had to say.
Voters have elected George Santos. If there is a concern, he will go through ethics. If there is something that is found, he will be dealt with in that manner. But they have a voice in this process.
It is an issue that Republicans need to handle. Clean up your house.
Elsewhere on Capitol Hill, former Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts is taking over Republican Senator Ben Sass's seat. Ricketts was appointed to that Senate seat by current Nebraska Governor Jim Pillen. Senator Sass is leaving to become president of the University of Florida. Ricketts will serve for 2 years, then face a special election in 2024 to decide if he will still hold the final 2 years of Sass's term. In a statement, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said Ricketts has a, quote, proven record and deep commitment to public service. That does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And this friendly reminder, if you want to watch previous episodes of the program, you can see them anytime on the CBS News website. Just head to cbsnews.com/red and blue.